In Ireland, we're all fond of a story. Old pictures, drawings, and none more so than about the past and how our fathers and mothers, our communities, played, worked, lived and thrived. How we value the past and open it to scrutiny tells a lot about us as a people. It would be easy to think that it's just at this time when we can't meet others and share physical space that having access to our heritage through a virtual world has become important. But the reality is that our diaspora are spread all over the world, and they, as much as us, need to be able to access our collective memories. I'm delighted to launch the Waterways Ireland Digital Archive. For the communities that live along our navigable waterways, those whose families left Ireland via our canals, those who worked on our barges or distributed their wares via the waterway network, and those that study, research and love our heritage, this is a very exciting day. The original maps and drawings from which the locks, bridges, weirs and aqueducts of our navigable waterways were built are here. The photos and slides of the Royal Canal collected by Dr. Ian Bath and the waterway travels of Route Delaney have been collated and digitised. The oral histories and stories of key people in the life of the waterways are ready to be shared. I acknowledge and thank the people and communities who have donated their stories, film, photographs and drawings to Waterways Ireland to conserve and digitise. Through the Waterways Ireland Digital Archive, access to this unique set of stories is available to us all.
Today I would like to tell you about the launch of the Waterways Ireland Digital Archives. But first I want to thank our Heritage Minister Malcolm Noonan for his great support in helping us to officially launch the collection. Archival records are normally unpublished and almost unique, unlike books or magazines of which many identical copies may exist. The archives within the Waterways Ireland collection number 11,000, and they're predominantly maps, drawings, photos, slide transparencies, and records of waterway-related transactions from toll books to invoices. It is important to acknowledge all of the donors who have donated personal archival materials related to the waterways. And on behalf of Waterways Ireland, I want to personally thank all of our donors. The launch today is of our digital collection. We have over the last year or so worked to digitise approximately 7,500 pieces of materials, with over 50% of them being maps and drawings. Digitising means we have scanned the document and taken an electronic image of it, which enables it to be rendered on a device such as a website. This facilitates ease and convenience of viewing or reading anywhere, anytime. Enough of the technical stuff. Where is Indiana Jones, I hear you asking? Well, we have a nice collection of contributors in this short video, and they're much more interesting than me. So over to them.
The digitisation process started quite a number of years ago, where we actually started off with digitising the collections that we had. That involved scanning all the images, cataloguing them and preparing a database that we could work with. We finished that process, we now have a digital archive and it's ready now for users to view. The engineering collection itself is very much an historical collection. Some of these original drawings are over 200 years old, and these are the drawings that document the history of the canals and the waterways. And they're very much working documents because our engineers today will still refer to these drawings. So say for example they go to work on a lock chamber and they need to know what or how the original lock chamber was constructed, so they will refer to the original drawing to see how it was originally built. So the engineering collection are a very important aspect of our archive, and we want to preserve those documents very much and keep them, for future generations.
I suppose our primary role is the operation of these structures and management and protection of them. So on a day-to-day basis we operate items such as the locks on the Shannon navigation. These locks were built centuries ago, and it's very important that we A, understand how they were developed, and B, understand how they were intended to be used. We have lock keepers using them on a daily basis, and we need to ensure that they're operated safely, both for the lock keeper's safety and the public safety who are passing through them on their boats. The archive is an invaluable asset within engineering, and in particular the operations engineering and the development of management and maintaining of these structures. Over the last number of years, we have carried out a restoration programme for the lock gates on the Shannon navigation. Before we get into any design or plans about what we will upgrade on these locks, it's very important for us to understand how they were originally constructed and what exists within the structure. A lot of these structures are underwater and we can't see them from ground level, and we sometimes are unaware of what might be under there. So before we would get into any detailed design, we would always come to the archive to see what information was available. For example, Ruski Lock was completed a number of years back, and from these drawings here in front of us you can see that the drawings that were done back in the 1840s are actually quite similar to the drawings that we designed when we were planning how we would construct and upgrade the lock gates themselves. This information is critical. If we do not have this information, we cannot progress with the detailed design that is needed to carry out the construction project successfully. The online archive is of huge significance to us, in particular within the engineering division. I suppose I'm geographically based in Leitrim, which isn't that far from the actual archive, but we have a wide array of engineers scattered throughout the country. For these engineers, it's important that they have access to this information without having to actually travel to Enniskillen where the archive is stored. Having these drawings online will ensure that in 50 to 70 years, when the lock gates are replaced again, that an engineer will have access to these drawings in a digitised format, and it won't be relying, or he or she will not be relying on a drawing that will be at that stage 200 to 250 years old.
We have been very lucky in that we've had a couple of quite significant donations in the past. We have received a donation from renowned Waterways historian Ruth Delaney, and that was a photographic collection. And these are photographs that she would have collected during her travels on the waterways going back to the 1950s. But also amongst that collection are the photographs, and quite a lot of them are historical photographs that she would have collected during the course of her writing the many number of books that she has written over the years on the waterways. So she's written extensively on the Shannon and the canal. So these are photographs that she would have used in those publications, and she has very kindly donated that to the archive.
We were very fortunate in that the leading Irish author on waterways, Ruth Delaney, happened to take a voyage on the Royal Canal in 1955 on the Hark, a vessel at the time, and there is available a record of that. We've also had one of our members, Charlie Hayden, who took a lot of cine film back in the late 70s, 80s up to 1990, and that has now been digitised and it's available in the archive at Enniskillen.
We were also very lucky to receive a donation from the late Dr. Ian Bath. Now, Ian Bath was a founding member of the Royal Canal Amenity Group.
Dr. Ian Bath was meticulous about keeping records of everything that happened. So he captured the state of the canal back in the 70s when it was in a state of dereliction. He photographed that, and his collection have now been passed on to the Waterways Ireland archive in Enniskillen.
In his collection are many transparency slides, which are images of the canal from the early days right through to the decline. So he does document very clearly the physical decline of the canals, and through the many thousands of images you can actually see how the canal declined quite rapidly from the 1950s onwards. And he also documented all the volunteer rallies and boat rallies and groups and so forth that he was involved with, where they were actually went out and repaired some of the lock gates along the canal. So the collection itself it's a very significant collection between transparencies, documents, letters, minutes from early canal amenity group meetings and so forth. One of the stories that we brought to life is the story of the tools of the waterways. We took an original drawing from the 1840s, and it was a drawing showing a design for implements and tools, and these were designed for wheelbarrows and spades. So in partnership with the local Fermanagh and Omagh District Council and with the National Trust, we were actually able to reconstruct those tools. So our local craftsperson, our carpenter, Albert Robinson, made a wheelbarrow using the exact measurements that were detailed on that drawing, and using ash and elm he was able to successfully recreate the wheelbarrow. And then the National Trust at Patterson Spade Mill made a spade and shovel for us using the exact same measurements as well. So when we look at the wheelbarrow today and the spade and the shovel, it's actually quite remarkable when you look at the short shaft on the wheelbarrow and the short handle on the spade and shovel, and they all suggest that the navvy himself would have been no taller than 5'2". And when you consider that over 200 years ago and the many thousands of kilometres that the navvies were responsible for digging, it's actually quite amazing that the navvies were able to do those with such simple tools as a pickaxe, a spade and a shovel and a simple wheelbarrow. And they were able in one day alone to dig up to 12 cubic yards of earth, removing the rubble, earth and clay with just a simple wheelbarrow. So it is quite an amazing feat. One of the things that we are looking forward to with the digital archive is that creating awareness about the fact that here in Waterways Ireland we do have a physical archive, and that we are very much interested in preserving the history of the waterways, and we are very open to donations. So if anybody has any old cine film, photographs, documents that they would be interested in donating to the archive, or even if they would just like us to digitise it for them, it is something we're very much open to and we would welcome.
My family owns the heritage barge 45M, and over the years my father has collected a huge amount of objects, pieces of boats, but also documents, brochures, postcards, all of that kind of thing. So he had a huge collection that used to live in 3 boxes in the top of the wardrobe. I think we're at a stage where the boatmen that can tell us about our waterways history are no longer with us, and I think it's important that therefore the documents and photographs and brochures and all of those other pieces that help us remember the history of our barges, of our waterways, are preserved, so that we can all know where they came from and celebrate the history and the lives of the people who worked on the canals in the past. My father travelled a lot for his work, and that brought him to a number of locations around the country, and he would always take the opportunity to have a look in a skip and see what other people were throwing out. One man's rubbish is another man's treasure. And he would have frequently popped into Tullamore or Shannon Harbour and had a look to see what was there. He would have had the canal, for example, the canal logs of what the barges would have carried as they were passing through Shannon Harbour. Grains, sugar, turf, those kind of things. He would have also had records of lockkeepers' wages and things like that, so documents that would have been thrown out of offices along the waterways. But also at one stage he toyed with the idea of setting up a boat hire company, so he collected brochures from all of the hire companies all on the Barrow, on the canals and on the Shannon during that time.
We're hoping that with this digital archive that local communities will find it very interesting, because they're drawings and photographs maybe relating to their local town and village, especially those based on the canals and the waterways. So there should be something there of interest to just the general public, or heritage groups, historians, and even if you have an engineering interest, there should be something there to appeal to everyone.
It's simply a treasure trove, and using the records from the bridge and lock ledgers, I was able to track each and every occasion the boat travelled up and down to Limerick. So it'd be there's one record from 1875 of Ida coming through Portumna Bridge with 140 pigs on board bound for Limerick. And as usual, it was 2 men and a boy who traded on the boat. And this was in January, for goodness sake. So it was 24/7 and 365 days a year. This was a big thing. And they returned 2 days later from Limerick, carrying guano from the South Seas as fertiliser, and that then went up the Shannon and was distributed. So to have access to old records like that when I was doing my research, it was just gold dust. And the fact now that they're going to be digitalised, I'll be able to go back in and do it remotely. I was able to track each and every journey that boat made during all those decades. where else would you be able to do something like that? And it's credit to Waterways Ireland that this archive has been maintained and gathered together in one place, because for future generations who are interested in the Irish heritage of the waterways, it's worth its weight in gold as far as I'm concerned.
A certain group of us would have forever been interested in the background, the men, the history of the boats, the intricate history of the boats and who they passed to and from, and what they did and what they carried, and the records. For quite some time the records have been, although they're there and available, but they've been scattered far and wide, and now they've been gathered in this wonderful archive in Enniskillen, and now everything is going online, so at the touch of a phone or whatever we can get the information, which is the ultimate goal, that this stuff is available to everyone and anyone. Because the passer-by, which is important to us. I mean, we traditionally we operate them on canals and the river and lake system where they worked. So forever we are having people ask the background, the history, and now to have it online is a pure blessing. You don't ever own these things. You're passing them through the next generation. You're trying to hold them together, hold the history together, get as much as possible on paper or film or whatever about the background. Everyone loves to get a little bit of the actual history of their own boat, be it a person who worked it or a person who owned it. It's always about the history and the background. The age, of course, stuns people. To a man, they'll always, if you want to have a look at it, go downstairs, you know, this kind of thing. People are mesmerised with the thing and what it was and how old it is. So that is a lot of the motivation, yes. It's a way of life more than a possession. There's a big package in owning one of these things or caretaking one of these things.
We are delighted to launch the Digital Archive today. It's been a long process. It's taken quite a while to get here to this point, but I'm delighted to say we've got here, and the archive, the physical archive, the material that we have in it are now available online for users to see. So I hope everybody enjoys it.